We have all. Welcome to the module Correct Behavior in Case of Cybersecurity Incidents. This doesn't seem to be a normal info window. Something's not right here. In case of a cybersecurity event, the people affected should do 3 things as quickly as possible. But in which order? Excellent reaction. In each situation that could be a cyber attack, consider taking these 3 steps. First, cut the internet connection. Second, inform the competent department. And third, wait for further instructions. Cybersecurity incidents can be very different and also manifest themselves in different ways. What do you think? Which of these examples are cybersecurity incidents? Unfortunately, that's not right. All of these examples are cybersecurity incidents. Even if a file behaves strangely when you're opening it, you should take care and follow these 3 steps. The same applies for suspicious calls and emails, as well as indications that your password has fallen into the wrong hands. In such cases, it's best to be safe and clarify the dangers. You have now completed the first part of this module. Now put Chippy to help wherever she can. Due to her good nature, however, she has no idea who she is actually giving access to the company building. Once inside, the hacker has an easy job. Whether sensitive data in the recycling bin or unlocked computers, there is a multitude of opportunities to attack. Sounds like a scene from a thriller, but according to a Bitkom survey, 22% of all companies fall victim to so-called analogic social engineering every year. If Ian didn't know so meticulously that the postman doesn't normally ring twice, this could have ended in a disaster. Using the right software to unpack the file. What would you do in her situation? Very good reaction. Before downloading a new program, you should always ask the competent department to approve it. You have now completed the first part of this module. Sarah is the last one in the office once again, and she's ready to go home. Before she goes, she is supposed to eliminate the most important sources of danger for data theft in the office. Click the security risks that Sarah should eliminate. Unfortunately, those weren't all the security risks. The attacker could still steal information. Please try again. Click here to see the security risks in Sarah's office. You have now completed the first part of the. Because of too much brainstorming, Eddie forgot his password. So he calls out an in-house competition. Whoever guesses his password first wins the prototype of his latest invention. Ian and Claire get to work immediately. Claire is sure to find the solution on Eddie's profiles in social networks. Names of relatives, pets, vacation spots, or favorite brands. Ian, on the other hand, puzzles with combinations of letters and numbers, birthdays, license plates, or abbreviations. Only Laura is shocked. She cracked Eddie's password in no time. It's one of the easiest and most frequent ones. And if she could crack it, then surely the hacker as well. Fortunately, Laura can prevent the worst. Until it becomes clear at the award ceremony that Eddie has used the same weak password for all of his accounts. While Laura rushes to limit the damage again, the question for Eddie remains: what was his password? Well, as a cybercriminal, you attempt to get into Eddie's user account. Select the password you can use to get in. Very good. You have gained access to Eddie's user account. Since password 123 is probably the most frequently used password, cybercriminals often just try it out. Now try to get into Sarah's user account. What do you think her password is? You have figured out Sarah's password. Many users use passwords that contain a personal reference. This gives cybercriminals the opportunity to guess passwords. Now try Ian's user account. What do you think his password is? Unfortunately, that's the incorrect password. Ian reused an inherently secure password multiple times, so the already known password would have been the right choice. As a final challenge, now try to gain access to Laura's user account. What do you think her password is? Unfortunately, that's not Laura's password. None of the other options have succeeded either. Laura's password is too strong and unique to give anyone the chance to guess it. There are various characteristics that can make a password particularly strong or particularly weak. Adhere to your company's guidelines on this matter. You should always take note of these additional points. With two-factor authentication, you can add more security to your user account. You have now completed the first part. Welcome to the module Unsafe Email Attachments. Here you will learn how to recognize unsafe attachments in emails and what you should do if you receive such emails. Eddie is over the moon. His new project has been nominated for an Innovation Award. Click on the email to learn more. Eddie's itching to open the attachment in the email right away so that he can learn more about the award. But wait, there's also an email from Laura in his inbox. Messages from her are usually important. What should he do? It's best to leave it alone. Eddie shouldn't open attachments so carelessly, especially when the email promises a reward. Laura writes as much in her email. Eddie takes a close look at the ending of the attachment's name to figure out the file type. What do you think? What type of file is this? Good job. At first glance, it looks like a PDF file, but the file ending is what counts. It's an exe file. Exe files are particularly unsafe. Click on the pictures to learn more about exe files and other high-risk file types. Eddie wants to know for sure, so he always examines email attachments very closely. Learn more about the file types shown here by dragging them over to Eddie's magnifying glass. A supposed email attachment can contain a hidden link that leads to a falsified website. Click on the pictures to learn how you can recognize hidden links. Looks like Eddie gets a prize after all. Laura has seen how diligently he examines file attachments, and that's deserving of a reward. You have now completed. Welcome to the module Spear Phishing. In this module, you will learn what so-called spear phishing is and how you can recognize it. Additionally, you will learn how to protect yourself against this special kind of phishing attack. It's a regular day at the office. Sarah and Ian are working at their desks. He asks her to quickly make a money transfer for him. He says he is on the road and cannot do it himself. Sarah is a little skeptical and asks Ian for his opinion. On the next morning, Mr. Hawkins has returned from his trip. The three of them are shocked. Yesterday's email did not come from Mr. Hawkins. Sarah has obviously become the victim of a fraud. Spear phishing is very dangerous. This is mainly due to three factors. Such targeted attacks occur frequently, and almost 3/4 of all medium-sized and large companies experience these kind of attacks once a year. When the attack is successful and real damage occurs, it is usually very serious. The average cost of and such targeted attacks can be extremely unpleasant or embarrassing for the user personally. This is the case, for example, if intimate personal information is uncovered or used as blackmail. But how exactly does such a spear phishing attack work? First, an individual employee or a group of employees is selected in the company. Then, information and insider knowledge on this employee group is collected. Possible sources are social networks, but also company reports or the company's website. As soon as the attackers have compiled enough information, they contact their victims under false pretense and try to convince them of false facts. Attackers might, for example, impersonate a superior or a client company that has changed its bank details. To prepare for a spear phishing attack, hackers access both private and professional information. Profiles on LinkedIn, Facebook, and other social networks are possible sources for them. But also, public expressions of opinion in a forum, wish list on Amazon, or a personal blog or Instagram post can contain useful information for them. Additionally, hackers try to access different professional data sources. These could be organizational charts that are shown on the company website, publications, or telephone numbers and contact data that can be found on the internet. It can also include information on supplier or customer relationships that are publicly traceable. But how can you tell whether a spear phishing mail is a fraud attempt? Click on the numbers to find out. The sender's address is manipulated to look as if the email came from your boss or colleague. You can find out how to analyze the sender's address in more detail in our module, Spam and Phishing. Look for inconsistencies in the mail. Attackers will probably always try to research all available information, but they are unlikely to get everything perfectly right. Therefore, you should pay attention to whether there is anything different from how it is usually done. Spear phishing emails usually also contain a clear call to action, for example, to make a bank transfer or reveal a password. These messages usually stress the urgency of the matter. They use phrases like very important, do this quickly, or send me today in order to put pressure on you. Finally, hackers try to urge you to open a file document. These files could include a certain malware, for example, and copy, encrypt, or delete the data stored on your system. Keep in mind that not only exe files are dangerous, but also many often used Office file types like docs or PDF. You can find out more about this topic in our module, Secure and Insecure File Types. Sarah and Ian are in the office. Ian wants to send an email with a file attachment, but it doesn't work. For some reason, he can't send the file. There are several good reasons for the strict separation of private and professional data. You can find the most important ones here. Ian uses the company internal file sharing platform to send the files to Mr. Hawkins. It all worked out fine, and Ian is relieved that he has found a secure solution. Mr. Hawkins has received the file and is pleased as well. Well, you have received a new assignment. Click on the envelope to learn more about the case. Take a closer look at the information by clicking on the individual tabs in the folder. You are in the office of Ian Morris, the victim of the cyber attack. Look around and search for clues. Ian Morris must know more about the incident. Select a question to ask him, and then click on Next to see his answer. Drag his answer to your notepad to take notes. Interesting. What would you like to ask him next? Drag his answer to your notepad to take notes. Interesting. What would you like to ask him next? Drag his answer to your notepad to take notes. That's all for now. Thank you, Mr. Morris. You are in the office of Ian Morris, the victim of the cyber attack. Look around and search for clues. This is Ian Morris's smartphone. Look through the message history of his messaging app and take notes by clicking on the boxes. Look at that! Ian Morris received a link, but the URL is hidden. Click on the image below to examine the URL more closely. The domain provides information on where a link leads. Can you identify the domain of this link? Enter it into the text box. Not quite. Use the following tips to find out whether the link is trustworthy. Here is your new job. Click on the envelope to start your investigation. Learn about the case by clicking on the folder. You're up. Investigate the clues in Eddie Marr's office. Investigate Eddie Marr. An email from the CEO. Could this be a phishing attempt? Take a close look at the message. What are the indications that this is a phishing email? Not quite. The email address shown here does not match the contact and is not from the CEO. The email also places a lot of pressure on the recipient to perform an action. Cybercriminals can falsify internal email addresses. Here is an overview of how to examine suspicious addresses. You're up. Investigate the clues in Eddie Marr's office. The cybercriminals had insider knowledge. But from where? Learn more by clicking on the two sources of information. Eddie Marrs posted something about his company on a social network. Click on More to read the full post. What do you think? Could cybercriminals have used information from Eddie Marrs' post? Precisely. Eddie Marr shared his work email address on a social network. This increases the risk of cybercriminals obtaining his email address. Here is everything you have found out. How can Sarah and Ian recognize a phishing attack? In almost all cases, the attackers forge the sender address. Since it is a mass mail, the salutation is usually impersonal. Phishing mails usually contain links or attachments that should be opened. Ian clicked on a link in a phishing email. Even so, he can still recognize the fake website as such. He looks for unusual additions to the internet address. On the login page, Ian is asked for further data besides his password. Sometimes Ian's browser already highlights security concerns. To protect themselves from phishing, Sarah and Ian always remain alert throughout their day and use caution with any unusual inquiries. Even with trusted senders, they pay attention to changes in language style, or, for example, in the signature. They check the sender's email address, links, and attachments for inconsistencies. If a suspicion arises, it is best to ask the sender directly, for example, by telephone, and, if in doubt, contact the local IT department. And what Sarah and Ian never do is share sensitive data with people they don't know personally, because no authority or company would request such data by email. Sarah and Ian are sitting in the office kitchen. Ian has 4 new emails in his inbox. Some of them seem strange to him. Sarah tells Ian of a newspaper article she read, according to which almost 3/4 of all emails sent each day are spam or phishing emails. Without spam filters, Ian's mailbox would be completely full of spam and phishing emails. The filters already stop the majority of fraudulent mails, but not all of them. That's why it's so important that Sarah and Ian know what to look out for, so they'll recognize phishing mails that end up in their inbox. Basically, unpleasant emails can be classified into 3 different types. Spam messages, which contain unwanted advertising but pose no security threat. Phishing messages, which are mostly about picking up words or spying on account details. The third type are spear phishing messages, which are explicitly tailored to a specific user group or even a specific individual. To execute these kinds of attacks, the hackers often put in extensive research work in advance. But what do hackers actually do in a phishing attack? By clicking on the numbers, you can see step by step how a phishing attack works. How can you distinguish suspicious and unsuspicious emails? And how can you recognize phishing emails? There are 6 important signs. First, usually these emails try to build up pressure. The salutation, however, is usually impersonal. The attackers are often after money or data. Links and damaged attachments. Often, the written text contain linguistic errors or an unclean formatting. However, there are also phishing emails that are written in perfect English and which are specifically tailored to you. These emails could address you personally and do not necessarily demand money or data in the first place. That is to say, sometimes with a few simple tricks, you can get a better impression if the sender's address is legitimate. First, you should take a look at the exact sender details. Next, you should check the sender's address more closely. Afterwards, you can check if there's a reply to field. This is a common tool used by hackers to intercept your response. Additional information behind the sender address should also make you become suspicious. Sender addresses can be forged by simply spoofing the real domain. These 5 points will help you to identify and deal with phishing emails. You should always be vigilant. Check the email addresses of incoming messages. Only share personal information when necessary. Check a sender's authenticity in case of doubt. And in addition, always call your IT department immediately if you suspect foul play. If you follow these basic steps, you will improve cybersecurity in your office significantly. Module: Falsified Email Addresses. Red alert! Cybercriminals are attacking Ian's, Sarah's, and Eddie's company with sneaky phishing mails so that they can steal sensitive information and trade secrets. Now it's up to these 3 to defend the company. Lend them a hand. Ian already has an email in his inbox. What should he do? That's exactly right. Ian should report this email to the responsible department because the sender address is suspicious. The email also asks him to perform an action and places pressure on him. That same day, Eddie, the director of Project X, receives an email from a business contact. The contents and contact information seem normal at first glance. Still, Eddie wants to err on the side of caution. Now the contact address is visible. What do you think? Is the address suspicious? That's exactly right. The email address itself is not suspicious at first glance, but that doesn't mean anything. Eddie should stay alert and take a closer look at the email. Eddie wants to see which address a potential response would actually be sent to. After all, the sender address that is displayed is not necessarily the actual recipient address. Warning: the sender and recipient address are different. Eddie should thus report the email to the responsible department and never reply to the email. Shortly before leaving the office, Sarah receives an email from a coworker in the archive. She has checked the email address, and it does not seem suspicious at first. How should Sarah proceed? Precisely. Sarah compares the email address with the one in her company's address book. The verdict? Both addresses match. Sarah has to dig deeper. Sarah does have another option. Click on the telephone. Good evening. This is Sarah from marketing. I just received an email from you. Just to make sure, did you send me this email?
Hello, Sarah. I didn't send you any emails. I think we should report the email to the responsible department right away.
Ian, Sarah, and Eddie each fended off a phishing attempt with your help. Take a look at Laura's overview and see how you can stay safe in the future too. You have now completed the first part. What would a good online shop's website look like in real life? Exactly. Broad selection, neatly organized, and above all else, secure. When Ian heads out to the store, however, he has to make sure that he doesn't take the wrong exit. Otherwise, he would end up on a website that could be deceptively similar to the original. And once Ian has arrived at the store, his data are in serious danger. So keep your windows and doors locked so that viruses cannot get in and get out quickly. If you have taken the wrong exit by clicking on a fake link, you can end up on the strangest pages. Click the numbers to take a closer look. Take a close look at the URL in the address bar if something about the website seems strange to you. It's important that you Good job. This is the encryption. If the lock icon is closed, data are encrypted and not visible to third parties. If the lock icon is open, you will see HTTP instead of HTTPS. That means other parties can view the data being transmitted. A word of caution: cybercriminals can also use encryption. Very good. This is the subdomain. The subdomain can be freely defined, and some of the most common are www, shop, and mail. If a link is too complex or if the subdomain has changed, you should correct. The domain is the unique name of a website. Well done. This is the top-level domain. It can often provide information on the location or function of a website. Remain cautious if you see a URL with a strange ending or unusual double ending, like .us.com. Your safest bet is to examine links before you click on them. Click on the icons to learn why this is important. If a fake link looks deceptively similar to the original, this is called squatting. When cybercriminals recreate a known website with a different or doubled top-level when a link contains a combo squatting, sound squatting. Would you like to learn how to find a hidden domain in a link? Or do you think you have now Ian is having his breakfast and reads some news on his mobile phone, including an article on why apps are a security risk. Suddenly, a pop-up appears, urging him to execute a software update. Well, what do you think? Should Ian trust his software update? Click yes or no. That's right. Ian better not install this supposed update. It doesn't seem trustworthy. But how can you detect malicious apps and their updates? If pop-up windows appear and want to urge you to download anything, be extra careful. You should also pay attention if the download contains unrealistic warnings. For example, that your account will be blocked or your phone will stop working if you do not. You should also be particularly careful if you are requested to download software outside official app stores. Legitimate apps and updates are only available in the official app stores. To find out what can happen if you install malicious apps on your smartphone, click on the buttons. You should also be careful not to use fake banking apps. For example, there are cases in which customers of a certain bank thought they were using the legitimate app to instruct money transfers. However, in reality, they were using a fake app and had given the attackers all their sensitive account data, including TAN numbers. Last but not least, you should be careful not only for your own security, but also for your data privacy, to not give too many permissions to an app. In this example, it would be very strange if a flashlight app needed access to your location, address book, or emails. But how can you increase safety when dealing with apps? First of all, you should clarify with your employer which apps are allowed on your work phone. Secondly, you should always keep an eye on the access permissions of individual apps and check this regularly. Third, you should uninstall all apps that you don't need or that seem strange to you. Every additional app on your device is another potential vulnerability, especially if you don't update it regularly. In addition, you should protect individual apps that contain particularly sensitive content with a password. But how can you tell if your phone is already infected with malware? There are various signs. Among the most common ones are higher telephone bills, a shorter battery life than usual, additional and unusually high data traffic, the simple fact that your mobile phone slows down and has longer response times. It's a good thing Ian has learned all about app security. In the future, he'll pay much more attention to which apps he installs on his phone. He has drawn up a short checklist for this. First, all updates should be carried out automatically and regularly. Secondly, you should not hesitate to ask for help if you are not absolutely sure. Third, you should only obtain apps from official app stores. Fourth, you should always remain vigilant and watch out for malicious apps, even in these official stores. Always watch for warning signs when installing apps. Fifth, you should always be careful with giving individual apps access to your data. Ian's in love with his new smartphone. He told Sarah how he bought it online at a low price, and that he now wants to use it as his new business phone. However, his colleague has some concerns regarding security, so Sarah helps Ian to make his mobile phone more secure. First of all, it's important to make sure that a good PIN code is in place, so that Ian is having his breakfast and reads some news on his mobile phone, including an article on why apps are a security risk. Suddenly, a pop-up appears, urging him to execute a software update. Well, what do you think? Should Ian trust his software update? Click yes or no. That's right! Ian better not install this supposed update. It doesn't seem trustworthy. But how can you detect malicious apps and their updates? If pop-up windows appear and want to urge you to download anything, be extra careful. You should also pay attention if the download contains unrealistic warnings. For example, that your account will be blocked, or your phone will stop working if you do not install a certain software immediately. You should also be particularly careful if you are requested to download software outside official app stores. Legitimate apps and updates are only available in the official app stores. To find out what can happen if you install malicious apps on your smartphone, click on the buttons. For example, you could become a victim of fraudulent services. In this case, very often something is promised free of charge. In the end, however, you are actually subscribing to an expensive scam. You should also be careful not to use fake banking apps. For example, there are cases in which customers of a certain bank thought they were using the legitimate app to instruct money transfers. However, in reality, they were using a fake app and had given the attackers all their sensitive account data, including TAN numbers. Last but not least, you should be careful not only for your own security, but also for your data privacy, to not give too many permissions to an app. In this example, it would be very strange if a flashlight app needed access to your location, address book, or emails. In such cases, you should reject it and choose an alternative app that needs less access rights. But how can you increase safety when dealing with apps? First of all, you should clarify with your employer which apps are allowed on your work phone. Secondly, you should always keep an eye on the access permissions of individual apps and check this regularly. Third, you should uninstall all apps that you don't need or that seem strange to you. Every additional app on your device is another potential vulnerability, especially if you don't update it regularly. In addition, you should protect individual apps that contain particularly sensitive content with a password. But how can you tell if your phone is already infected with malware? There are various signs. Among the most common ones are higher telephone bills, a shorter battery life than usual, additional and unusually high data traffic, the simple fact that your mobile phone slows down and has longer response times. It's a good thing Ian has learned all about app security. In the future, he'll pay much more attention to which apps he installs on his phone. He has drawn up a short checklist for this. First, Ian's phone is ringing. It's a call from an unknown number. The caller says that his bank account has been blocked due to irregular activities. Ian is now supposed to enter his bank account number. He quickly hangs up and wonders if this really was his bank. Sarah tells him that she recently read something about so-called voice phishing attacks. They are fraud attempts that take place over the phone. But how does such an attack work? Click on the numbers to find out. In the beginning, an automated call system is fed with a list of phone numbers. This list might have been published somewhere containing hacked or stolen phone numbers. The system then calls every number on the list. These calls can also be made using a fake caller ID displayed on your phone. This is supposed to make it look like somebody you know is calling you, like a colleague or your bank. A computer voice then tries to trick you into revealing information, for example, your bank account number. In some cases, the criminals even use real people in a call center. One example is the well-known Microsoft support fraud. The last step after obtaining your valuable information is, of course, the exploitation of the information. For example, the criminals place false online orders in your name or transfer money from your account to their account. There are even more variants of voice phishing. For example, criminals impersonate employees of well-known companies over the phone and say that there is a problem with the victim's computer. As soon as the victim accepts this alleged help, malware can be installed or sensitive data can be captured. Another popular scam is the infiltration of support forums, where customers seek help with their products. There, criminals pose as alleged support employees of the respective company and ask the user to disclose asking the user to call a specific phone number. This is supposed to make the phone call seem even more legitimate. A particularly ingenious attack is a call with a falsified or artificially generated voice. Today, software exists that can make an artificial copy of your own voice. For this, you don't even have to train the software yourself. It takes about 1 minute of audio recording, with which you feed the software. The associated software is currently still in a beta stage, and you would still recognize that this is not your own voice. But the technology is developing rapidly. Cybercriminals have been among the first to exploit this and already carried out such attacks. They successfully pretended, for example, to be the CEO of a certain company and made the company pay a significant amount of money to a fake bank account. Unfortunately, many employees would respond to such a call and would provide the person posing as their supervisor, for example, all data, passwords, or fund transfers requested. So once more, be especially careful if something seems strange to you. Ian is relieved. His cell phone and his bank account are safe. The IT department has provided him with a handy checklist for the future. Ask for contact details or references to authenticate the identity of the caller. Check the phone number the attacker uses to call. For example, check the website of the supposed organization. Keep calm. You should not reveal any personal information to unknown callers. The park, and he receives a new message. It's a text message from Sarah. He thinks it's a bit weird that Sarah texted him from an unknown number, but he takes a look anyways. She has sent him an invitation to a new instant messaging app. Ian has installed the new messaging service. Now he can finally start chatting with Sarah. Back at home, Ian sits down at his computer and opens the file that Sarah has sent him. Suddenly, Ian's screen goes dark and is locked. What has just happened? Did Sarah send him a malicious file? Let's have a look at the potential dangers of instant messaging services. The good old text message or SMS was surely better and safer, wasn't it? Unfortunately, it wasn't. There is a method called smishing, which is a word made up from SMS and phishing. Smishing can be used to send messages that contain malicious links, just like phishing emails. One famous example of a cyber attack via messaging services exploited the well-known Facebook Messenger. For this attack, a supposedly known contact from your contact list sends you a video link. They encourage you to open the link. If you got a message with a link from a friend saying, "Look at this," wouldn't you be tempted to click on it? If you indeed click on the link, you will be redirected to a fake login page, though. It will request your username and password for Facebook, YouTube, Google, etc. They say if you want to watch the video, you have to log in. However, if you actually enter your password, the attackers immediately can hack into your account. Before you get the chance to react, the attackers send out the same message to all your Facebook friends. In addition, now, you're probably wondering how to choose a secure messaging service. You should pay special attention to the following 3 points. Sarah talks to Ian and Mr. Hawkins in the office. They speak about a business trip that Sarah needs to take next week. But Sarah is not sure about any special security measures she should perhaps be adhering to. For example, can she use her? If you follow a few basic rules, you can already implement some basic protection for your mobile phone. Just click on the numbers to see the different rules. You should also make sure that your device is always screen locked, even if you only let it out of your sight for a very short time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or password are very common passwords and are therefore extremely insecure. Hackers can crack them in a matter of seconds. Whether you use a PIN or a pattern, you should always make sure that no one else sees it, just like when entering your PIN at an ATM. Also, you should clean your display regularly. Research has shown that the oily residue on the screen is enough to crack the unlock pattern in 2 out of 3 cases. It is also important to only activate your device's interfaces when you really need them. This includes, for example, Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, but also USB or GPS. You may need some of these interfaces on the road, but they should only be active while you really need them. You need to take special care when using public free Wi-Fi hotspots. If you really need to use free Wi-Fi, it is best to use it with a VPN to secure your connection. Many companies offer special VPN software. You should be able to get help from your IT department. You can also open your own Wi-Fi hotspot using your smartphone. Always use a strong password for encryption. Only share it with people you trust, and deactivate the hotspot immediately when it is no longer needed. During travel, it is very important to be aware of the possibility of theft. Don't leave your devices unobserved. In case your device is stolen, have it locked or even erased immediately, and deactivate stolen SIM cards. If you get rid of your mobile phone, make sure that all data on it is completely erased. Don't forget to remove your SIM card and destroy it if you don't need it any longer. Sarah is very thankful to Ian. He was able to give her so many good tips. Now she feels much better prepared for her business trip. Ian is sitting on a bench in the park, and he receives a new message. It's a text message from Sarah. He thinks it's a bit weird that Sarah texted him from an unknown number, but he takes a look anyways. She has sent him an invitation to a new instant messaging app. Ian has installed the new messaging service. Now he can finally start chatting with Sarah. Back at home, Ian sits down at his computer and opens the file that Sarah has sent him. Suddenly, Ian's screen goes dark and is locked. What has just happened? Did Sarah send him a malicious file? Let's have a look at the potential dangers of instant messaging services. The good old text message or SMS was surely better and safer, wasn't it? Unfortunately, it wasn't. There is a method called smishing, which is a word made up from SMS and phishing. Smishing can be used to send messages that contain malicious links, just like phishing emails. One famous example of a cyber attack via messaging services exploited the well-known Facebook Messenger. For this attack, a supposedly known contact from your contact list sends you a video link. They encourage you to open the link. If you got a message with a link from a friend saying, "Look at this," wouldn't you be tempted to click on it? If you indeed click on the link, you will be redirected to a fake login page, though. It will request your username and password for Facebook, YouTube, Google, etc. Before you get the chance to react, the attackers send out the same message to all your Facebook friends. In addition, they change your password, so you can't log into your account anymore. Now, you're probably wondering how to choose a secure messaging service. You should pay special attention to the following 3 points. Often unencrypted. He therefore resists the temptation. Unfortunately, in the hustle and bustle, Ian doesn't notice that his beloved mobile phone has just been stolen. Ian quickly informs the IT department of his company, which immediately locks the device remotely. Although he now misses his new smartphone, Ian reacted correctly. At least his data is now secure. Sarah talks to Ian and Mr. Hawkins in the office. They speak about a business trip that Sarah needs to take next week. But Sarah is not sure about any special security measures she should perhaps be adhering to. For example, can she use her laptop during travel? If you follow a few basic rules, you can already implement some basic protection for your mobile phone. Just click on the numbers to see the different rules. You should also make sure that your device is always screen locked, even if you only let it out of your sight for a very short time. 123455 or password are very common passwords and are therefore extremely insecure. Hackers can crack them in a matter of seconds. Whether you use a PIN or a pattern, you should always make sure that no one else sees it, just like when entering your PIN at an ATM. Also, you should clean your display regularly. Research has shown that the oily residue on the screen is enough to crack the unlock pattern in 2 out of 3 cases. It is also important to only activate your device's interfaces when you really need them. This includes, for example, Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, but also USB or GPS. You may need some of these interfaces on the road, but they should only be active while you really need them. You need to take special care when using public free Wi-Fi hotspots. If you really need to use free Wi-Fi, it is best to use it with a VPN to secure your connection. Many companies offer special VPN software. You should be able to get help from your IT department. You can also open your own Wi-Fi hotspot using your smartphone. Always use a strong password for encryption. Only share it with people you trust, and deactivate the hotspot immediately when it is no longer needed. During travel, it is very important to be aware of the possibility of theft. Don't leave your devices unobserved. In case your device is stolen, have it locked or even erased immediately, and deactivate stolen SIM cards. If you get rid of your mobile phone, make sure that all data on it is completely erased. Don't forget to remove your SIM card and destroy it if you don't need it any longer. Sarah is very thankful to Ian. He was able to give her so many good tips. Now she feels much better prepared for her business trip. Ian wrote down the most important things for Sarah to remember. Get basic protection for your mobile device. Always use lock codes and passwords. Disable all interfaces like Wi-Fi if you don't need them. Be extra careful when using free Wi-Fi hotspots. Don't leave your device unattended. Erase your device's memory before getting rid of it. Ian's phone is ringing. It's a call from an unknown number. The caller says that his bank account has been blocked due to irregular activities. Ian is now supposed to enter his bank account number. He quickly hangs up and wonders if this really was his bank. Sarah tells him that she recently read something about so-called voice phishing attacks. They are fraud attempts that take place over the phone. But how does such an attack work? Click on the numbers to find out. In the beginning, an automated call system is fed with a list of phone numbers. This list might have been published somewhere containing hacked or stolen phone numbers. The system then calls every number on the list. These calls can also be made using a fake caller ID displayed on your phone. This is supposed to make it look like somebody you know is calling you, like a colleague or your bank. A computer voice then tries to trick you into revealing information, for example, your bank account number. In some cases, the criminals even use real people in a call center. One example is the well-known Microsoft support fraud. The last step after obtaining your valuable information is, of course, the exploitation of the information. For example, the criminals place false online orders in your name or transfer money from your account to their account. There are even more variants of voice phishing. For example, criminals impersonate employees of well-known companies over the phone and say that there is a problem with the victim's computer. As soon as the victim accepts this alleged help, malware can be installed or sensitive data can be captured. Another popular scam is the infiltration of support forums, where customers seek help with their products. There, criminals pose as alleged support employees of the respective company and ask the user to disclose sensitive information. Sometimes phishing emails are sent asking the user to call a specific phone number. This is supposed to make the phone call seem even more legitimate. A particularly ingenious attack is a call with a falsified or artificially generated voice. Today, software exists that can make an artificial copy of your own voice. For this, you don't even have to train the software yourself. It takes about 1 minute of audio recording, with which you feed the software. The associated software is currently still in a beta stage, and you would still recognize that this is not your own voice. But the technology is developing rapidly. Cybercriminals have been among the first to exploit this and already carried out such attacks. They successfully pretended, for example, to be the CEO of a certain company and made the company pay a significant amount of money to a fake bank account. Unfortunately, many employees would respond to such a call and would provide the person posing as their supervisor, for example, all data, passwords, or fund transfers requested. So once more, be especially careful if something seems strange to you. Ian is relieved. His cell phone and his bank account are safe. The IT department has provided him with a handy checklist for the future. Ask for contact details or references to authenticate the identity of the caller. Check the phone number the attacker uses to call. For example, check the website of the supposed organization. Keep calm. You should not reveal any personal information to unknown callers. A colleague of Ian and Sarah has especially not the birthday child itself. After work, Sarah is getting creative at home to finalize the present, so that the party can begin the next day. Sarah and Ian just had a video conference call with Mr. Hawkins. Ian tries to give Sarah a brief overview of the different types of collaboration tools and what they can be used for. Collaboration tools can be used to simplify cooperation processes. Mainly, you can easily share information and files between colleagues. Coordination tools help to organize tasks and individual work packages in a team, or simply finding a suitable date for a meeting. So-called remote access applications allow to access or share the screen of another computer. For example, to watch a product demo together of help with IT support. Finally, communication tools are used for video calls or internal chats. When using collaboration tools through your web browser, there are 3 things to keep in mind. You should always check your browser for updates and keep it up to date. Your browser can only serve as a secure basis for the use of collaboration tools if it's running the latest version. Also, you should only visit websites for collaboration tools that use encryption. You should also check your browser plugins so that they do not provide an unwanted access gateway for potential attackers. Sometimes plugins are also called add-ins, add-ons, or browser extensions. The following security risks are often associated with the use of collaboration tools. Integration of apps or tools into each other may be very practical. However, there's always the risk of data breaches. So be careful when allowing access to your data by integrating another app into your collaboration tool. Another security risk is the manipulation of file names. For example, in some tools, .exe files can easily be renamed into DTO PDF files without this being directly visible. This makes it even easier to mislead users than, for example, using an email attachment. Also, the supposedly safe previewing of links is possibly dangerous, because for the preview, content from the potentially unsafe website needs to be fetched. Many tools provide an automatic summary of the most important topics, called Email Digest. This means, however, that potentially sensitive information is shared via email, which is a very unsafe medium of communication. It's best to disable such email notifications or digest. Due to the lack of end-to-end encryption of a variety of tools, it makes it a lot easier for hackers to access these tools. By sharing links generated from the tool, hackers can draw some conclusions about which tool the company is using. If there are known exploits for this tool, then that gives hackers an easy attack angle. Also, the name of your company should not be included in the account name. This makes it significantly easier to guess account names for potential attackers. Choose a code word instead. Ian has compiled a short checklist for using collaboration tools safely and securely. First of all, the use of the tool should be coordinated with IT. All files and links sent and stored with a collaboration tool should always be checked. If possible, the collaboration tool should have end-to-end encryption and should be deactivated or closed after use, so that further data stream is limited. In addition, data should only be shared on a need-to-know basis. Company inside information should not be shared, and email notifications should be disabled. The data required for remote access should be kept absolutely confidential and should only be given out if you are absolutely sure that your counterpart is a legitimate person who needs this access. Sarah and Ian are at the office in the morning. Sarah wants to send Ian a large data file. She tries to send it by email, but the file size is too big. Sarah is thinking about sending him the file using her private Dropbox account. There are different types of file sharing services. They have different levels of security. Temporary file sharing services are often used to send files back and forth as easily as possible. You can use this for a holiday snapshot, but you should definitely not use it for sending sensitive company data. With a medium security level, freely available platforms such as Microsoft OneDrive or Google Drive are used in many companies. If this service has been activated by the corporate IT department, the IT department also has a certain amount of control over the execution of the platform. However, certain dangers remain. Only company internal platforms that are operated and secured by the IT department in a professional manner have a high security level. It can either be an externally purchased solution or an in-house development. Hackers can use different ways to try to get to you. Here are 3 ways they use file sharing services. These can be manipulated file sharing links, which are included in emails and other messaging tools. The links lead to websites of supposedly safe and well-known file sharing services. However, the websites are manipulated, and any data you put in gets sent to the hacker. His goal is the theft of login data to your file sharing services, so he can access your data. File sharing services are also used to spread malware, because within a file sharing service, users often click on files even more carelessly than, for example, when the file would be sent as an email attachment. Mr. Hawkins has compiled a checklist with the most important points to consider when using file sharing services. First, only use your company's officially permitted solutions. Secondly, the folders and files stored in the folder should be cleaned up regularly so that only data is stored there that really needs to be shared. Thirdly, you should be particularly restrictive when granting access to files. Only those persons or colleagues who actually need access to the data should be given access. This significantly reduces the risk exposure of the data stored on file sharing platforms. Finally, you should encrypt private and sensitive data or protect it with passwords in order to further increase security. There's a company celebration today. Sarah takes a few snapshots and uploads them to Instagram. Well, what do you think? Is uploading photos from work and related information on social networks in any way problematic? Yes, exactly. Hackers use this kind of information to prepare an attack. They search social networks such as Zing, LinkedIn, or Facebook and collect information on employees of the hacker's target company and their contacts. Hackers like to use social networks to prepare their attacks. For their preparations, they make use of information both from private and professional accounts. This kind of information is easily available for hackers on social media. The most common dangers when using social networks can be seen by clicking on the numbers on the laptop screen. Hackers like to use social networks to prepare their attacks. For their preparations, they make use of information both from private and professional accounts. Sarah is sitting at the computer when suddenly she receives a friend request from Ian. That's a bit strange because she is already connected with Ian. Let's see what happens when she accepts the request. By confirming this fake request, the attacker now can access more sensitive data, which Sarah usually only shares with her friends. These could be private photos, for example. This information can then be used by the hacker to make phishing mails appear more realistic. But what can Sarah do to protect herself from such attacks? Here are a few tips. Be cautious when accepting friend requests. You should not only know the person directly, but also make sure that you are not falling for a fake profile. Always be careful when you are following links to login pages. Always take a closer look before entering any data, and whether it makes sense to enter your data at this point. Only use secure devices in a secure setting. For example, do not log on to your social network account on a public computer or in an internet cafe. Likewise, you should be careful not to use free public Wi-Fi when it's an insecure connection. Finally, you can do a lot for your security by selecting the security settings with the highest possible protection level on your social networks. Eddie has lost his golden notebook and needs it back urgently. Can you help him? He has written down all of his passwords in the notebook. This is not an especially secure way to keep them. Laura recommends using a password manager instead. So that you can be sure not to forget your master password, you should use a mnemonic technique. Here, we present a technique recommended by the Federal Office for Security in Information Technology. The password manager can not only keep passwords safe, it can also help you create new passwords. When you need to access data stored in the password manager, you can either have it displayed automatically or open the program manually. You have now completed the first part of this. Ian sits in the office and does some research on the internet. Suddenly, a pop-up window appears. He is supposed to update his office account. Ian looks at the website. It seems to be the Microsoft Office login page, and he is asked to enter his password. Well, what do you think? Is this a legitimate query, or is Ian going to fall for a scam? No, I'm afraid that's not correct. Although everything seems all right at the first glance, this could still be a fraud. Cybercriminals can make deceptively real copies of websites, but at this point, you can't be sure. We have to inspect the site and the domain further. But how do you distinguish legitimate websites from fraudulent ones? Fraudulent websites often, but not always, are missing a secure connection. This means that the address line in the web browser is not preceded by HTTPS. only by HTTP. The internet address itself can be forged. For example, similar domains can be used, as here in the example, the website of Amazon with the additional net.cz. Sometimes the layout of a login page looks unusual. For example, because additional information is requested, or the hackers were not able to make a perfect copy of the design. However, perfect copies do exist, and you have to watch out for them. You should also pay attention to browser warnings. For example, if they notify you because of an invalid certificate. How can you examine the internet address, also called URL, in more detail? The first part of a URL is always the transmission protocol. Here, we distinguish between encrypted and unencrypted connections. The second component is the so-called subdomain. It's a subdirectory of the actual main domain. The best-known subdomain is www. It is important to know that these subdomains can also consist of different blocks, as in this example. The subdomain can be freely defined by the domain's owner. In this example, the subdomain suggests a Microsoft.com site, although it isn't. Step 3 shows the actual domain. This, along with the top-level domain that follows next, is the only decisive fact in determining whether a URL is legitimate or fake. The fourth part shows the top-level domain. Usually it refers to the country in which the domain is registered, or to the area, such as .com, .info, or .org. Everything that follows to the right of the slash after the top-level domain is called a directory. This refers to the exact page or file on a domain. Here are a few tips on how to easily identify the real domain. Click on Continue to learn more. To identify the true domain in 3 steps. Start with the first single slash from the left. This means that you go through the entire URL until you reach the first single slash. If you don't see a single slash until the end of the address bar, start at the end of the displayed URL. Once you have identified the slash, go back to the left until you reach the second dot. What is written between this dot and the single slash is the real domain. In this example, it's pw-online.net. Everything else should be ignored. With this analysis, you can see that Ian's website is a fake. It does not refer to a legitimate Microsoft page. In fact, it's an unknown external page, PW. Sarah and Ian sit in front of their locked PC screens. Something is wrong. What happened to their computers? Click on the individual characters to find out more about different kinds of cybercriminals. Industrial spies steal trade secrets or spy on customer data. Cyber warriors, on the other hand, are engaged in espionage or pursue political goals. Data thieves mostly steal money or sensitive information so that they can sell it to their other parties. Hacktivists usually have political goals. However, some hacktivists are also looking for self-portrayal. Hobby hackers can have very different motives again. Some are simply motivated by personal revenge or self-portrayal, for example. Well, what do you think? What is probably the most efficient way to access the data of a company? An attack on the IT system or on you as the user? Yes, that's right. IT systems are usually very sophisticated nowadays, so it's much easier for hackers to manipulate users exploiting our human emotions. Various tactics are used to manipulate you as the user. For example, an email is sent that is perfectly tailored to you, tricking you into opening it without second thought, and maybe even revealing your access data. Once this has happened, the hacker can access, destroy, abuse, or spy on otherwise secure IT systems. Attacks via telephone, so-called voice phishing, are also becoming increasingly common. As you can see, cybercrime should not be underestimated, and attacks can affect anyone. A large proportion of all companies are targeted by cybercriminals several times a year, with the average damage from such an attack amounting to $3 million. Even in your private life, you can become a target. Over 50% of all people have experienced password theft or credit card fraud, or have been taken in by a fake online shop. But how do the hackers do it? How do they get us as users to do things we don't really want to do? Very often, emotions are exploited. This may include the creation of anxiety or pressure. For example, by sending an urgent reminder or by threatening the user with severe consequences. However, it also works when referring to one's private life. For example, an interesting contact request on a social network, or an attacker might send data that piques the recipient's interest, such as salary data or a list of possible candidates for layoffs. Furthermore, routines or automatisms are also often exploited. You can imagine, for example, that in the HR department, attachments of an email with the subject application might be opened quickly without being carefully inspected. Often the recipient's belief in authority is exploited, for example, when cybercriminals are posing as a law enforcement agency. Sarah is at the office and seems to be quite worried. After clicking on a link in an email, her computer reacts strangely and displays a cryptic text. Well, what do you think? What should Sarah do now? Yes, exactly. Quickly disconnect the computer from the network and contact your IT department so they can take the appropriate steps. An IT security incident can have very different causes. Some of them are shown here. Click on the buttons to find out about them. Sarah wonders who might be the appropriate contact person to inform in case of an IT security incident. Yes, the IT department is the right point of contact for all kinds of IT security incidents. Sarah is relieved. The IT department will help her, and she will soon be able to use her computer again. But how should you behave if your device or account is affected? This list of immediate measures gives you an overview. Ian comes into the office one morning and brings a USB flash drive with him. Ian wants to open the files on the flash drive, but Sarah is alarmed and warns him of possible dangers. Usually there are 3 different types of security software. There's your company's firewall that monitors all network data traffic. It can block insecure connections to the internet. Also, there is so-called antivirus software. It scans the files on your computer for possible malware. Another component is the spam filter, which filters incoming emails and their attachments. Spam filters are supposed to make sure that spam and phishing emails stay out of your inbox. However, as you probably have noticed, this does not always work perfectly, and far too often, spam or phishing mails get into your inbox anyway. It is important to understand what a firewall protects against and what not. Basically, a firewall protects against external threats. For example, malware downloads from bad websites. However, a firewall does not protect against internal attacks. If an infected USB flash drive is inserted into your computer, the firewall doesn't help. Antivirus software scans your computer for malicious software called malware. This means that it checks whether your computer system is infected with a harmful virus. The antivirus software scans the files you open in just that moment, so-called ad hoc scan. It also does complete scans of the computer system at regular intervals. On this page, you learn how antivirus software works and what is required for it to work properly. A spam filter tries to classify emails into good ones and bad ones. Good emails are harmless. Bad ones are annoying spam or evil phishing emails. The spam filter uses a variety of techniques for this purpose. For example, incoming emails are checked against a so-called blacklist. Blacklist providers have databases of known bad senders of spam and phishing emails. Spam filters also scan the content of an email itself. Finally, users can create local black and white lists on their computers themselves using their email software. It's a good thing Sarah was able to provide some comprehensive information and clarify things for Ian. He is now aware of the risks and will not insert the USB flash drive into his work computer. Sarah has a summary of the most important things to remember for Ian. First, use all security software available and always keep it updated. But secondly, don't rely on security software completely and always practice common sense. For example, don't trust email attachments that you didn't suspect. Always stay alert and don't feel too safe. It's for your own protection. Sarah and Ian are working at their desks when suddenly Mr. Hawkins, their boss, joins them. If you click on the individual numbers, you can take a closer look at possible security risks in this office. Mr. Hawkins tells them about his meeting with the police. He is worried about all the ideas and tactics some criminals seem to apply. There are a few frequently used tactics with which criminals try to gain access to your company's data. Tailgating is a practice where an intruder tries to sneak through the security check at the entrance of a building unnoticed while following an employee. Sometimes intruders even tempt the employees to help them under a certain pretext, so they won't have to enter alone. When dumpster diving, attackers search the trash of companies for valuable information. Therefore, make sure to always use a document shredder for sensitive files and dispose of electronic storage media in a professional manner. Your IT department can help you. Leftovers are referring to residues from working processes. For example, uncleaned whiteboards still full of information in meeting rooms, or printed documents left behind. These are easy prey for criminals once they have gained unauthorized access to your premises. Therefore, always clean up and destroy documents that are no longer needed. Sarah and Ian are quite shocked by the things that could happen on company premises. Fortunately, Mr. Hawkins brought a checklist from his meeting with the police. Consider these points in order to contribute to more workplace safety. Ian is now working from home. During a video phone call with Sarah, he quickly realizes that he hasn't even thought about the security of his workplace. Before you move your workplace into your own four walls, you should clarify a few basic things. What equipment should you use? Your home computer or a company computer? Who can you contact if you have questions or want to report emergencies? And through which contact channel should this be done? If you click on the individual numbers, you can take a closer look at possible security risks in this workplace. If you are allowed to use your private computer, you must ensure that a firewall and an antivirus program are installed, and that you keep your operating system and browser updated at all times. The internet connection can also be a gateway for hackers. Therefore, make sure you have a secure connection by protecting your Wi-Fi with a strong password. Caution: do not use the standard password on the back of the router. Create a new one. Otherwise, you will make it especially easy for criminals. Use a VPN client when accessing company networks. VPN stands for Virtual Private Network and creates a kind of encrypted tunnel for the transmission of data. Let your IT department advise you on this. You can also receive dangerous emails at home. Hackers especially exploit current topics to make their victims curious or unsettled. But do you know how to detect such emails? Click on the dots in the email to reveal indications of phishing. Trusted senders, such as well-known organizations, are particularly often imitated. If you look closely, you can usually spot the scam quickly. If you're unsure, check the data against the original addresses of the organizations. For example, by visiting the official websites. If pressure is built up, this is always an indication of a phishing email. Don't let yourself get carried away to act impulsively. This is exactly what criminals hope for. Another indication of a phishing email is an impersonal form of address. But be careful. Even a correct address can be an attack. Never click on links or attachments. This point is particularly important because in most cases, criminals want to install malware or take control of your computer and data this way. In summary, what should you pay attention to when working from home? Here you will find the most important aspects. Ian and Sarah welcome a new intern to their department. Sarah shows him the office and explains some of the internal procedures. For example, with regards to the new General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, it is necessary to obtain the consent of individuals before their personal data is stored. To document the processing of this data and to report any violations to the data protection officer, for example. The intern deserves a break at lunchtime. However, Ian first points out to him that there are also some offline measures in place to protect the company against IT security risks. For example, if you leave your desk, the computer should be locked with a password. Moreover, no important data should be left openly visible on the desktop. Sensitive documents that are to be disposed of should never simply be thrown away, but should be shredded beforehand, even if you're really hungry or in a hurry. Of course, on your first day, you want to be as polite as possible. However, when entering or leaving the office building, you should always take care to ensure that no unauthorized persons sneak into the building. The same applies to storage media, like USB drive. Sarah's colleague found a USB memory stick in the entrance lobby of the company. She wonders what might be saved on it. The label certainly looks interesting. Well, what do you think? Is it a good idea to simply plug the memory stick into the computer? Oh no, they better not do that. Not only USB memory sticks are referred to as storage media, but also a wide variety of other devices. They can be roughly divided into mobile and stationary devices. What can happen if storage media gets lost or infected? Whether it is from a parked car with open windows, from your trousers pocket while using public transportation, or right from your desk during your lunch break, data carriers are often stolen easily. In these cases, if the data on the stolen device is not encrypted, it can easily fall into the hands of criminals. Unauthorized access to your computer or other hardware can occur just as easily. This can happen right at your workplace while your colleagues are nearby. In addition, it is also possible to infect a storage device itself directly and then trick you into using it, just like in the example of Sarah and her colleague with the memory stick they had found. But how does something like this actually work? For this purpose, the attacker will place a flash drive with supposedly interesting things on it in the lobby of a building, on the parking lot, or in any other public place. The label usually says something catchy which triggers the finder's curiosity. For example, layoffs or salary overviews, or a supposedly attractive customer list. This exploits the curiosity of the finder and ensures, for example, he or she will insert the device into a computer and will thereby cause the system to become infected. If prepared in this way, malware can quickly install itself on the computer. This can happen without the user noticing. This gives the attacker access to the user's data and other data within the corporate network. He can also set up backdoors, which the hacker can access continually, even after the initial attack, to further compromise your data security. Sarah and her colleague have become more careful. They rethink whether it would be a good idea to simply access the unknown flash drive with their computer. The next day, Sarah and Ian are at the office. Sarah has a meeting with a client. She wonders, what is the best way to take with her the data she requires? There are several ways to encrypt data on a USB flash drive. A standard flash drive usually does not encrypt data. Anyone with access to the flash drive can access the data easily, so this is not a secure option. Some USB flash drives support hardware encryption, where you have to enter a PIN code before you can access the data. However, hackers can find ways to crack the code and gain data access anyways. Well-configured software encryption of the whole device offers the best security for your data. If you only have a regular memory stick on hand and need to store sensitive data on it, you should encrypt the file yourself with a password. It is definitely better than storing the files completely unencrypted. Deleted data is not necessarily completely erased. This is mainly due to the fact that when data is deleted normally, it is only released for overwriting. This means that it is initially only removed on the surface, but is still present on the hardware level. Only when the data on the hardware is completely overwritten multiple times is it really no longer accessible. To make sure that sensitive data is properly erased, you should use special software. Sarah has created a checklist with the most important information about the use of storage media. Anyone can catch a virus. Literally, Ian's out sick. So, Sarah has taken a few of his projects. Now, every day, she's getting emails from senders she doesn't know. As a result, Sarah is careful whenever she opens an attachment, because even common file formats like PDF, Word, and Excel files can download harmful malware from the internet via links or macros. EXE files are especially dangerous because they can install malware directly onto the computer. Trojan horses are one example of malware. These appear harmless when they infiltrate devices and can contain other malware such as spyware, viruses, or worms, which then start harming your device without you noticing. Encryption Trojans are particularly dangerous
because they are capable of encrypting entire hard drives. Cybercriminals then demand that the victims pay a ransom to reverse the encryption. Because of this, Sarah is cautious. But this one email sounds pretty urgent. She clicks on the attachment, but she's weary of how long it's taking to load. Could it have been a virus? Sarah keeps calm, disconnects from the internet, and notifies her company's IT expert Laura. Everything is soon back to normal. Thankfully, it was just a false alarm. Laura tells Sarah that the security program should be up to date. After all, security programs can only offer sufficient protection if they know what viruses they're supposed to look for and are properly equipped. Just like Ian, who, with plenty of vitamins, will hopefully be back on his feet in no time. Get well soon, Ian.
One day at the office, Ian receives a strange email with a file attachment. Ian isn't really sure about what to do with it. What exactly makes file attachments so dangerous? Emails are frequently used to send file attachments. Most of us are very used to this, and that's exactly what makes it so dangerous. File attachments are one of the most frequent entry routes for malware. You must therefore always take a closer look before you open a file. In order to do this, it is particularly important for you to understand which file type you are looking at. In this example, two confusingly similar file types are shown, yet they have very different threat levels. The problem is, no kind of file type is completely safe. So even with potentially less dangerous file types, you should always pay attention to the context. Always ask yourself whether you expected this file and whether the source can be trusted. Nevertheless, file types can be classified according to their threat level. A plain text file, for example, is potentially less dangerous because it cannot contain executable code. All common Office files, such as Microsoft Word files, PDF files, or even image files, such as JPEGs or PNGs, are considered potentially dangerous. Files that can be executed directly are particularly dangerous. This includes, for example, the extensions exe file, but also other file types shown here. Sarah explains to Ian why he must pay special attention to exe files. These can potentially be very dangerous. Ian feels uneasy now. He uses Microsoft Office files in his daily work, and they have been classified as potentially dangerous. What should he do now? When dealing with Office files, following a few general rules already makes it significantly more secure. First of all, deactivate all embedded macros. Avoid the Activate Content button. Like in the example on the right, only use macros when you are absolutely sure the source of the file can be trusted. What about other typical Office files? PDF files, for example, are often considered to be secure, but they can also contain malware or links to bad websites as well. The same applies to file archives like zip files. They can be used to conceal malicious content. Therefore, you should not open a zip file if anything seems strange to you. Sarah has 3 useful tips for Ian to keep in mind. Watch out for unsafe sources and do not trust them. If a file is sent to you from an unsafe source, do not open it. Always deactivate all macros by default and don't allow any exceptions. And last, always choose the safest configurations for your system and take precautions. Ian's laptop is particularly slow today. He's wondering what's going on. Sarah already has an idea what could be the cause of the problem. She suspects to have catched a malware infection from a recently installed software. There are thousands of variants of malware. However, they can be roughly separated into 4 main types. Viruses and worms are software programs that reproduce themselves within the computer system. In order to spread their infection as much as possible, they try to move from one account or computer to the next. Trojan horses are programs that look harmless at first glance. They disguise themselves as auxiliary or security programs. Once they activate, though, and this can be much later, they download even more malware or take control of the computer. Encryption Trojans, so-called ransomware, is a special version of a Trojan horse. When they infect a system, important data is blocked or encrypted, and the user is requested to pay a ransom for the data to be released. In this case, extreme caution is advised. Often, even after paying the ransom, the data cannot be recovered. Yet some encryption Trojans still leave a possibility to restore the data without paying a ransom. However, this always depends on the individual case and should be investigated by an expert. Adware's main purpose is to show you unwanted advertisements. It can be annoying, but it's not really dangerous. Spyware, however, gathers information about you in the background without influencing the system in any other way. So you might not even notice it. The data is then sent to the hackers for further exploitation. A very famous example of ransomware is called Emotet. It has caused damages in the hundreds of millions of dollars for companies all over the world. In the following, you'll see how this attack worked. First, a user in a company receives a phishing email containing a disguised malicious file attachment. If the user executes the file to start the installation, Emotet encrypts all personal documents, including all text, audio, image, and video files during the installation process. They are then no longer accessible for the user. After completion, a red warning screen appears. In some cases, this can't even be closed anymore. There will be a message demanding the payment of a ransom combined with the threat to otherwise irrevocably delete all of the data. If the company pays the ransom, it might be possible to recover parts of the data, but often the recovered files are still defected after the decryption or can no longer be recovered. There is no guarantee whatsoever. There are several factors by which you can detect an infection with malware. If the speed of your computer is drastically reduced, you should become weary. This can be a sign of extensive background activity, like a virus at work, for example. Another indication can be a lot of pop-up windows that suddenly appear automatically and contain unwanted advertisements, for example. A shortened battery life or a sudden and inexplicably increased data consumption also indicate an active malware program. Of course, a so-called lock screen is also a clear indication of an infection with ransomware. In this case, you have to be highly alert. In case of an emergency when your computer is infected with malware, the following measures will help you. Well, you've received a new job. Click on the envelope to learn more about the case. Take a closer look at the details of the case by clicking on the individual pages in the folder. Welcome to your detective agency. The employee to be questioned and all the evidence are here. Piece together the case by questioning the victim and taking a closer look at the electronic devices. According to the report, malware was used to conduct the attack. Start the scan. Bingo! 4 results. So the cybercriminals got into the network through this computer. But which file did the attack start with? Select the file and confirm. Well done! Sarah Hamilton believed that the file was a job description. The infection must have begun with this Trojan.
You have finished your analysis. Here are your notes. Interesting. A chat history. Read through the conversation. Take notes by clicking on anything suspicious. This link was sent to the victim, but where does it lead? Inspect the link by clicking on it. The link supposedly leads to office247.com. What do your instincts tell you? Is that correct? Well done. This link was manipulated in that a letter was replaced. This inconspicuous deception is hard to notice. It's always best to be diligent. You have finished inspecting the cell phone. Here are your notes. Question Sarah Hamilton. She can definitely provide some useful information. Now drag her response to the notebook to take notes. A good clue. What would you like to ask next? Now drag the response to your notebook to take notes. A good clue. What would you like to ask next? Now drag the response to your notebook to take notes. Very good. This is important information. Thank you, Miss Hamilton. You are just about to crack this case. All you have to do now is arrange the steps in the right order. To do this, drag each of the 3 steps into the matching box on the bulletin board. Outstanding work! You have solved the case. Your findings have been summarized in this final report. Read through the report by clicking on the individual pages. Oh, and before you go cracking more cases, you should know that this story is based on a real incident. Click on the newspaper to learn more.